don't try to do everything yourself. There's a lot of products and services out there that are already packaged, ready to go to help you. Don't reinvent the wheel because you're going to waste time and money. You're better off going to a billing company to do your billing than you hacking some solution.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study series. In this episode today, we have on Dali Bentolila, who is the owner of Telepath Corporation, a company specializing in wireless communication systems. With a strong focus on technological solutions, Bentolila has been instrumental in driving the company's growth and innovation, and I'm happy to welcome him to the program. Before we get started here, Dal, I'd love to hear from you just a quick little Coles Notes version of who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up as the owner of Telepath Corporation.
So I own a small telephone company here in Canada called Telepath. And
Okay.
we started as a retail, like before we were selling to retail, before we were selling to end users, we were a consultancy. So the consultancy was from 2001 to 2005. And then starting 2005, we decided to parlay that into an actual telephone company that offers, telephone services to, we focus on small, medium business, but consumers kind of get, dragged along. Like it's friends, it's family, it's the owners of the businesses that want us to also do their homes. And, but our core is small, medium businesses in Canada. And then we get some consumers that just sort of make it through, right? So we started out just doing normal old school telecom. So long distance, toll-free calling card, conference calling, local line when that was being deregulated. So we were selling local lines. And then when the internet got derailed, broadband got deregulated, we started selling, ADSL and cable. And by 2007, we got into the VoIP space. So we started selling VoIP. 2007 was VoIP with equipment on premise. And by 2008, 9, we had migrated everybody to virtual, to what today we call the cloud. But essentially was, the system would go in the data center. And so people would be using their system that used to be a box in their office, but now it's a box in a data center, similar to the migration of what happened to email and web. People used to host their email server in their office, host their web server in their office, and slowly that went into the data center. Well, the phones did the same thing. They started out in the office, and now they're in the data. And now everything is virtual. Everything is cloud. Even your file backups and your like your file server now is Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive and so in your email, obviously everyone's on in the cloud. So Gmail and Microsoft and so now the same thing with phones. Everything is online. Everything is in the cloud. Almost nothing is in the office now. And so we started doing that 2008. Eight was everything was migrated to cloud. And yeah, and then ever since then, that's just gotten more sophisticated, more features, better quality, more reliable. As the internet got more reliable, all those things became more reliable. And so now in parallel to all that, one of the things we offered, which is interesting why you circled to me for IoT, and is that one of the things we started offering was wireless, kind of gray market. So we had like a large corporate account we started out with Rogers, then we went to Bell, then TELUS, then back to Bell, and now we're back at Rogers again. So we have a corporate account that we negotiate with the carrier, so we get better pricing, and then we turn around and resell to our customers. But theoretically, that's not allowed, and for none of the carriers in Canada allow reselling officially. So it's kind of gray market. Although that's about to change. Anyway, that's to be continued. So Telepath right now we offer hosted voice, email, web, broadband, wireless, everything to do with wireless. So that could be data only, could be voice and text, it could be the full the line with all the bells and whistles. So that's what we offer, and our core business customers are small, medium businesses, but we have consumer as well.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit about like your role at the company? What
I'm
does
the
your kind of
owner.
day-to-day look like?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the president and the owner and the founder. And so I've got a small staff. So I've got two people who do my support. I've got one person who does my admin and bookkeeping. I've got subcontractors that do, development engineering and programming. And then some of the stuff that we offer our customers is our own technology, our own thing. Other things are things that we resell, and some things are kind of a hybrid of the two.
Based on your experience and how you have kind of grown in this space, I'm sure that you have experienced some shifts in the industry. Are there any notable events or moments in your experience that have kind of marked a significant shift in the industry?
So for sure, the big shift in the 2000s and the early 2010s was the switch to VoIP. So, you know, back when we started offering VoIP, in the late 2000s, by the late 2000s, it was only representing single digit percentages of the marketplace. And now, I don't know what it is. I think it's more than 50%. I think more than 50% of businesses, their voice is going over IP as opposed to twisted copper pair. So that was a big shift. So I went from in the 2010s selling local lines, like that was one of my products. And now the only local line I have is here that I have one line for testing. Like I use it to do test calls. It's a beater line. No one knows the number. I have to look at the phone and read the numbers. I don't even know what the number is. So and even that line, which is supposedly local line, it's actually on a fiber connection with Bell. So it's actually not even a classic twisted copper pair. There's no twisted copper pair coming into the apartment, into my home office. There's only an Ethernet or fiber. There's fiber. And so that's one big shift is that before local line was a core product, we'll say, and now it's this like obscure niche thing that I mean, none of our customers have a local line. None of them. They all have a broadband connection and then using our service for voice. All of them. Now, I know other players that are my size or a bit or bigger. They're not at where I am, where I'm like 99.9999% VoIP and one line. I know there's other people out there maybe they're 50-50 or maybe they're more like what the market is, right? Like if you're at Google right now, what percent of Canadian businesses, are VoIP lines versus, twisted pair? I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 50-50 or 70-30 or whatever. So I know other companies that are like me are more like the market. But that's definitely a huge shift. And if anything, dial tone, like twisted pair, is for sure. All of us know it's a dying technology. It's a dying thing. It's not going to survive. It's all going to be voice over IP. So RJ11 or twisted copper pair is the old school phone line that would come into your house or office and terminate into a wall jack, and then you would plug in a phone in that wall jack. So that's called twisted copper pair, and that's dying. Right now, twisted copper pair, that wire that's coming into your office or home, more often than not, is only being used for VDSL, like to give you high-speed internet. And even that is being replaced by fiber. Like Bell, TELUS, they're growing out their fiber to what they call their fiber to premise. They're growing that out. And so now people get their internet from a fiber connection coming into their house, not a twisted copper. Now, if you're in remote areas, rural areas, forget it. You're still getting your internet through that twisted copper pair, and you probably still have a landline if you're out in those remote areas. Because even if you get broadband, even if you get internet, it's not very good. It's not very reliable because you're so far from the telephone company's, central office that, you have a normal line. But for those of us who live in cities, you know, twisted copper pair is dying. So the other thing, so what used to be how we used to get our cable TV, so that thick wire, that thick wire that we used to get, that's called coax.
Coax cable?
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that.
So That's right. And that still is going to all our homes too. And that's Rogers, Cogeco, Shaw, Videotron. They give you 99%, 95% of the time, they're giving you internet on that thing. Now, because that thing is just a more robust piece of medium, like if you compare the little wimpy wire that's for your phone line and you compare it to the coax is so much more thick, has insulator on it, has a mesh. So so intuitively, it can handle more throughput. And so that's why on a regular twisted pair, you'd be lucky to get 50 meg down, 10 meg up on DSL, on VDSL. But on coax, you can get gigabit on coax. You get gigabit down,
Right.
down 50 meg up. So you get a lot more, and it's more reliable, it's more stable. But again, because the medium is just better. But then you have fiber, which just blows those two away. I mean, it's a much more advanced technology. It does more error correcting. It does all these other things which is why on a fiber connection, you get 2 gig, 3 gig, 5 gig connections, right? On a fiber.
So you've been around long enough to see all of these transformations,
That's right.
transitions in the industry, and significant ones at that. I would love to get your perspective on how the customers have been receiving this. How has it been for you to serve your clients with these technological shifts?
I mean, it's my clients, again, they tend to skew small medium business. So they tend to be, on average, a little bit more sophisticated, and they have a different, like they're looking for a different menu, to use the restaurant analogy, right? Consumers are more fast food. Small medium businesses are more like, casual dining, right? Like they're a little bit more exigent. They're a little bit more, and their needs are a bit more sophisticated. So for sure, and then tack on top of that they're doing their voice over their broadband connection. So they're going to be in more of a hurry to get faster speeds and more reliable service. So they're going to be chomping more at the bit to go from the 5 meg DSL and the 3 meg cable of the 1990s. They're going to be in a more of a hurry to get 100 meg, 500 meg, gigabit connections into their office because it makes their voice better. It makes their employees more productive because they can surf and do things faster. So for sure, they're going to push more on the VoIP side because VoIP, the cost goes down and your sophistication goes up. You get more features, you get more flexibility. You can do work from home. You can, remote work. You could be traveling and be in some lounge in Delhi, making and receiving calls as if you're in Toronto. And the quality's taught as if you're in Toronto. The quality also, So businesses are going to really get tickled by that stuff. Whereas the home user, it's gonna take a lot more to get them to bump up their speed, bump up their Wi-Fi, bump up their, get a more fancy line with more fancy features. Why? They don't need it. I mean, a lot of residential customers just don't even bother with the landline, just operate on their cell phone, right? Because that's all they need. They just need a number where people can call them at from time to time, right? So for sure, they're driving the us offering more modern stuff. For sure, in our case, like our customers are going to be the ones who are going to push us a little bit. I try to stay ahead of it, because I myself am a small, medium business. So I myself am going to want these toys and I'm going to want these advanced features. So just for my own day-to-day running of my business, I'm going to adopt, Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive for my files so that I don't have a file server in my office anymore. I'm going to adopt Gmail for email because I want good spam filtering. I'm going to adopt, a sophisticated phone system because people are calling me and they need to hit 1 for that and hit 2 for that. And I travel a lot. So I'm going to want a system that can travel with me. So I'm going to want those things for myself. Well, I'm only a few months ahead of my customers wanting the same stuff, because they're going to do the same thing. So for that, I think we've been doing a pretty good job of pretty much they push us a little bit, we pull them a little bit, And it kind of goes back and forth a little bit like that. There's the odd thing that they ask for that I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And then but most of the stuff is, hey, do you have this? Yeah, we've had it for years. Oh, well, now I need it. Now I want that.
There's like a tug of war that
That's
goes on
right.
between you and
And
the
the
customer
customers.
to like
That's
lead
right.
that innovation forward. That's really cool. So at the top of our conversation, you mentioned that a lot of your business is coming from like friends of friends or friends of family and that sort of thing. Can you talk to me about a little bit more about like how you go about acquiring a customer?
That's a
Is
really
there
good
some
question.
front-facing marketing? Do you do a lot of networking? What's your angle?
That's a really good question. So up until now, I've deliberately chosen to only grow through referrals. So up until now, in fact, if somebody calls me and says, I found your name in the white page, or I said, go to Bell. I don't take new business that way. I only take new business through referrals. Like, oh, so and so from ABC company told me about you. Great, let's talk. So up until now,
What's the reasoning behind that kind of an angle?
so two things. So first of all is I almost have this like social contract with my customer. Up until now, I've had this social contract with my customer where I don't spend any resources or energy in marketing. I'm going to spend it all on business development and support. And you guys sell for me. And so you'll just overall get a better level of service because I'm not going to be distracted by marketing. I'm not going to use valuable resources for advertising or flyers or whatever. But you're going to get this like top quality boutique service from me. But in exchange, you're gonna want to share what your experience with your friends, and so I'm going to get business that way. And that's been kind of the agreement. It's kind of like this unspoken social contract between my customers and I up until now. And the other reason is in the telecom world, you have to be really weary about somebody who just calls you out of the blue and says that they found you. Like, why? In Canada, why would you not go to Bell or TELUS or Primus or Rogers? Why? You're probably shady, you know? You're probably not going to pay your
Yeah,
bill.
I've been paid a few bills. Yeah.
Yeah. Because no one else will take it because you're a deadbeat, right? So to me,
Yeah.
in telecom, it's a bit different. It's a bit weird, right? Like, why would somebody go to some you know, secondary player like me that my name's not that well known and all that? Like, unless you heard about me through a friend. That's different, right? But if you just stumbled across me and like, well, why? It makes me weary. So, and in telecom, a little less now, but it's very risky. People can rack up some pretty serious bills before you can shut them down. And then you're left holding the bag with your carriers. They can call international long distance. They can call sat phones. They can roam. They can do all kinds of really scary stuff that it doesn't take long to rack up $5,000, $10,000 bills, in a day, and before you catch them and you shut them down. So you got less now. Now we've, slowly, unfortunately, thanks to experience, you put safeguards in place and you control things and you put, you meter stuff and you have like these, countermeasures in place to protect you from abuse. But for the longest time, that was a real scare. And so for me, it worked. I'm like, you know what? I only take customers through referrals. So now, because things are a little bit safer and there's a lot more protections in place, and so you're a little less raw, a little less vulnerable. Now I'm contemplating doing a little bit of marketing, a little bit of marketing. I might do a little bit of flyering in buildings where I already have customers and just flyer there, say, hey, yeah, your neighbor's already a customer. I'm contemplating doing that right now just to get a little bit more growth. But up until now, it's been only through referrals.
Dali, it's funny. I've had many, many conversations with many, many entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs from all walks of things for the last probably 5 or 6 years. And I've never had a conversation with somebody that has intentionally put, and I'm trying to think of the right way to put this so it's not, so that it all makes sense, but you put a limiter on customer acquisition to grow the business. And that's so unique. That's very different than a lot of people, because everybody's trying to take the
It's
government off.
hungry.
Everybody's trying
I
to
know.
hook
I
a
know.
NOS system
But
up to
I
the whole thing
find
and put the pedal to the ground, right?
it depends on the industry you're in. It depends on the market you're going after. It depends on, because some industries need scale, right? Some industries need that scale, so they can't put the brakes on. They got to put
Right.
their floor, they got to floor it, right? Um, so it depends. I've had the luxury. I work from home, so I don't even have an office. I've had the luxury since day one to run a really lean and mean operation. So I didn't really
Yeah.
need to, and I've automated as much as possible, and I've got tools in place to keep costs low, and my quality is really high. I got, tier one, providers and stuff. So I've had the luxury of being able to keep the growth at a pace where every new client that comes on, when it's time to onboard them, they get smothered in love and affection. You know, because
It's a
because
recipe for
yeah,
success
so
there.
that one when that client comes on board, I got nobody. They're my only attention. I only pay attention to them. And then when I'm done onboarding them, and they get handed off to my, inevitably they get handed off to my support team, who does some, tidies up some things and changes the password here and changes the name there and all that. Well, again, my support team's not busy because I only took on one customer that week, that 2 weeks, and so they get smothered with love and affection from my support guys, right? And then when the first bill goes out, well, because I'm only growing at, one or two customers a month, well, they have a question about their bill. They get lightning fast responses from my admin person because, again, I only got one or two new clients that month. And then once you're past that, which is very similar in a lot of industries, customer acquisition and onboarding is 90% of the effort. And then, right, like you spend 90% of your attention and brain cycles in that first month, and then the 10% is the next 10 years. So it's right, it's all up front. Once they're up, and if you do it right up front, though, then that formula works. Like you work smart and focused and competently in that first month, that then it's really just 10% effort for the next 10 years because everything was thought of and set up correctly, and there weren't any gremlins baked in there because you did it all right the first time. And so and because the onboarding experience is so great, because their support experience is so great, because my support guys are not that busy. So when somebody emails, they get a reply in 20 minutes. Well, my gamble is that that will pay dividends. Like they'll refer me. Say, oh man, if you want to be treated like, you went into a boutique hotel, call Dali at Telepath. They're going to take care of you. So that's been my formula up until now. And so it's worked, but I'm kind of like a victim of my own success. Like I've got amazing systems in place, really robust. They're all the product of 30 years of business intelligence, and everything's being underutilized. My support team is bored. My servers are underutilized. Everything's underutilized. So that's what made me say, you know what? Because there's more protections in place now, and because things are more like there's more countermeasures in place, the risk is not as much to go with that one extra degree of separation. I'm going to maybe do a little bit of marketing, but not marketing takes a lot of money. Just a little bit of effort that maybe gives me one new or two more customers a month. Anyway, yeah. But again, like it's not for every, I acknowledge it's not for every industry and it's not for every company because it depends. If you're in something that needs scale, otherwise you implode. You can't do what I'm doing. You've got to go full force. You got to get 1 million customers in the first 6 months. Like otherwise you just crash and burn, right?
Yeah. There's all these other third party forces at play trying to
out of your control,
like shareholders or whatever, that you don't control.
Shareholders want a return within so many quarters because that's the deal. They only gave you that money with the expectation that's going to get recovered. I don't have anything like that. I'm 100% me, so I can play the long game.
Well, speaking of the long game, we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, Dali.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your perspective on the future. What's coming down the pipeline for your business and what you're building?
I think more of the same, really. There's nothing really because i- the areas like things like AI, right? AI is just another tool. I mean, it's just like search. It's just search on steroids, right? I mean, that's the way to say it, right? But I mean, I know it has other functions because it can do like, correct code and it can do all kinds of other interactions and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, when Google came along and revolutionized search, consumers and businesses used it to be more efficient and used it to be more clever and more competent, right? Because they could go in there and search the internet for solutions to problems. So AI just takes that to a whole other level. Like, you know, maybe we're going to use AI now. AI will start to do a little bit of our bookkeeping and it will do some of our problem solving and it'll do more intelligent searching for us. Like we'll use AI to search instead of us searching, right? So it's just another tool as far as I can see that will kind of like show itself up in various aspects of the business. It'll just make little aspects better, and faster or more efficient or whatever. So that's how I see that affecting us. As far as like voice and all that, I think that all with improvements, continued improvements in the internet and continued improvements to wireless and 5G and all that, all it'll do is just make what we're offering even more palatable. Because in the past, people might have pushed back on VoIP and all that because it's not reliable and if what if my internet goes down or whatever. But when that now is not even a factor because your internet's up, like people who have regular phone lines and internet, their lines will go down more often than their broadband will. You know,
Right.
so if their lines were on their broadband connection, they'd be up more than a separate. That didn't used to be the case 6, 7 years ago, but now that's actually statistically the case. Your broadband connection is more reliable than your twisted copper pair if you choose to maintain one. So I think I think so. If anything, all these improvements, this 5G, improvements to broadband, more bandwidth, lower latency, more reliable. If anything, will make everything else we're offering even more palatable and more appealing. And I think I just need to keep doing the same thing I'm doing, which is deliver good service, good quality products at a reasonable price, deliver good value to the customer. As far as a product in the pipeline, I mean, like I do have under my current Rogers Wireless account, I do have about maybe 40 lines that are data only, but that's a mix. You've got, because you've got data only tablets, data only smartwatches, but you got also turbo hubs. So I've got a lot of customers who are using turbo hubs as backup. I even have some customers that their only broadband connection is a turbo hub. So do you know what a turbo hub is? No.
Not a clue.
So you know how you do hotspot on your cell phone? You know how, let's say your internet at home dies and you're like, so you go hotspot on your phone, you connect your laptop to the Wi-Fi of your phone, and now you've got broadband again. You can Zoom, and the problem is that when you hotspot on your phone, well, you're using valuable gigs, right? Because most of our plans in Canada are limited on the number of gigs at high speed, and then they throttle you, right? Then you get
they cost you an arm and a leg and your firstborn son, and then if you can't pay that, they shut you down.
Now in Canada, there's protections. Now on the consumer side, they can only charge you $50 more for overage. And if you chose the unlimited option, what you do is you get a bucket of gigs at high speed, so 5G, LTE, 4G, and then once you hit that, you still get internet because unlimited, but they throttle you at 256 kilobytes or 512 kilobytes. So, but anyway, that hotspotting off your phone is essentially you're taking your cellular data and you're turning that into a broadband connection that all your devices can use. Well, a turbo hub is a purpose, like a single purpose device that all it does is that. So a turbo hub is essentially a router that has an antenna for cellular, but then gives you ports and Wi-Fi So instead of getting its internet connection from fiber or twisted copper pair or coax, it's getting it from the air. It's getting it from 4G or 5G, right? So we've got lots of customers using turbo hubs as backup or as an internet connection in an area where there's no coax, there's no fiber, there's no twisted pair, there's no other option. And so I have one customer, a business customer in Calgary, who uses a turbo hub as their only internet connection. And they use voice. They use it as if it's a fiber connection or a coax connection or whatever. So that, yeah. And then an IoT, because I thought we were going to talk more about IoT, but IoT, all it is basically giving everything a chip, like giving everything a 4G, an internet connection through cellular. That's what IoT is, right? So Turbo Hub is a version of IoT because you're putting a chip in there, it's getting 4G and it's giving internet, right? But now you could put you could give access to the cellular network to anything. So in the future, theoretically, your fridge is going to have a chip, and your car many cars already have a chip, right? Because they're connected to the network. So that's all IoT is. It's just the ability to give more things internet access. Now, I think we're going to go overboard. We're going to I think giving your fridge internet access might be, I'm sure you're going to record this, and in 10 years, you're going to play it back and say, "Hey, Dal, you thought that giving a fridge internet access was ridiculous, and everyone's fridge is going to have internet access in 10 years." And I'm going to say, yeah, how ridiculous is that? I could see the bandwidth because
it's funny you say that, because my mom's fridge has internet access, and she gets alerts on her iWatch every time we open the fridge.
That's right. Yeah. Or and eventually it'll be, well, when the milk is, you're running low on milk or whatever, automatically orders stuff. Like I could see, sure. Okay. Anyway, it might be a bit too much, but so was that the gist of what you want, is just like a snapshot of what it's like for a small telephone company in Canada? Is that essentially what you were looking for?
Yeah, Dal, you've been very generous with your time and wisdom, and everything that you've shared has been very enlightening. And is exactly the kind of conversation that we like to have, to understand kind of, what's going on out there, what people are working on, and what we can do to make that experience better. If in closing, if I could just get from you one real quick thing, if you had a piece of advice for somebody else who's kind of exploring these spaces, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't do everything yourself. Don't try to be a do-it-yourselfer. If if you need billing, get a company that does billing. If you need a company that does voice over IP, hire that company. If don't try to do everything yourself. There's a lot of products and services out there that are already packaged, ready to go to help you. Don't reinvent the wheel, because you're going to waste time and money. You think you'll save money. In the end, you're going to waste money. You're better off going to a billing company to do your billing than you hacking some solution. You're better off going and buying a voice switch from a company that's all they do is voice switches. Just buy it from them, because they're going to charge you this amount of money that if you had to do it yourself would be 10 times more, right? So don't be afraid to farm out and buy the pieces from companies that's all they do. They specialize in that. Don't try to overdo it on the do-it-yourself.
This is very sound advice. Dal, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to kind of pick your brain further, is that possible? And if so, how would one go about doing that?
Yeah, I'm open to it. I'm happy to have the conversations, because I learn too. And so, yeah, just email me at mydali@telepath.ca and schedule a time, hop on a call.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great, Dal. I'll make sure to link to all of that in the show notes. As for me and my team, if you want to get in touch with us, it's nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.